everyone. It is I, Audra. And before we even get started and I introduce our fantastic, fabulous guest, I would just like to say thank you to the mods. I appreciate you. I know you don't get paid, so I thank you for taking time out of your day to be here and moderate the chat. Thank you to the patrons. Thank you to the channel members, the Spooky Bays, Extra Spooky Bays. You are greatly appreciated. Thank you to everyone in the live stream currently. And most importantly, thank all of you watching this on the replay. Now that all the business is out of the way, I would like to introduce somebody who really shouldn't require introducing, but I am going to introduce them. It is Mia of Mia's Virtual Vanity. Y'all, if you have not been over there, I don't know what you're doing with your life, because the first time I ever watched a video of Mia's was because I found you on Twitter. I saw you say something on Twitter and it was very witty. And also you were just so damn beautiful. So I was like, oh, who is this person? They have a channel? And then I was like, oh my God, so witty. I will never get to that level of wit. And so
you're very funny. Like, your energy is simply unmatched. When I first saw you and your channel, I was like, where does she get all of this energy? This joie de vivre, man. I want some of that. Like, you're amazing. And I've always wanted to be part of one of your lives. And I like lit up like the Christmas tree behind me and all blushy because I'm really, really happy to be here. And hi everyone.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here because I'm going to tell you right off, you made me rethink some of the things that I thought about, because I have lived overseas, right? But that was also when I was a child. So there's like brands where I used to be like, oh, screw ColourPop, ... And then I realized that I don't want to alienate people in Europe and overseas who like that is what they have to get. I don't want to be like super hateful and be like, I'm not buying this, because then there's people who can't, like, there's brands that they can't get, right? And then there's also this sense of, even if they can't get them, they enjoy my content, but I also want people to feel included. So I realized like I was gonna let up my stance on ColourPop, even though they got a lump of coal this year.
Yeah.
But I just realized it was kind of important to do that, because I was like, oh yeah, America is like the US of America, because people like to continuously point out like, America's not the only part of America. I'm like, I know, you know what we're talking about. You're making it complicated. Yeah. But in the US, we tend to be very US centric and don't think about what it must be like living anywhere else and like buying makeup.
It's not only the US that is very USA centric. Like, I've seen, especially in political and social political discussions, sometimes people start with a premise that what? Leave me alone, I'm in a live, please. He's just heckling me.
Is he heckling you because he's going to marry you?
Yes, he's earned
For those
that
of you
right.
that don't know, congratulate.
Yes. Thank you. So let me just start from the beginning, because I lost my train of thought. It's not only the USA that is very US centric. I see a lot of people start political and social political discourse based on some things that are USA specific, that are quite removed from our day-to-day realities, and then they start arguing some things where I read and I'm like, you do realize we don't live in America, right? And that we're in Eastern Europe, and you gotta adjust your argument to the realities that we live in and not what you read on Reddit, right?
Yes. Like, I even made a point when I think we were speaking about, I don't know which live stream it was, because honestly, there's so many this month, but when I was speaking with, I think Emily, or I'm not sure, but I was talking about Indigenous peoples, and I said, please keep in mind that it's not just Indigenous peoples in the US, it's all over, that is a large encompassing term. And so we can't, when you see the word Indigenous as a person who lives in the US, you have to also remind yourself that like that can be in New Zealand, that can be in Australia, that can be in Europe. Like, there are Indigenous peoples everywhere. And we have to remember to not constantly focus that conversation on the Indigenous peoples of America being like, oh, well, they use this and this and this. And I'm like, well, did we think about this for these folks? Because I think what bothers me today, especially when it comes to YouTubers in this space, is if you are able to upload regularly, then you are definitely able to do a Google search. So,
Yes.
like, when someone comes in the comments and says, hey, da, 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 and you go, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. It's like, no, instead of I'm sorry, I didn't know, it's go Google it, find some information, come back and respond and be like, oh my gosh, thank you for bringing this to my attention. I did some research and found that, and that doesn't matter where you are. If you are doing YouTube, then you obviously have a stable internet connection
Yes.
in which to research.
I think this problem is multi-pronged, and I'm going to try to make sense here. So, the first one regarding personal responsibilities from companies, because Irene did say in the chat that ColourPop does deserve to be dragged, and I agree that every company does deserve to be dragged when they do some bullshit. Be it ColourPop, Makeup Revolution, whatever other brand, but we must also be wary of dragging with incomplete information or dragging when we're unaware of the situation or we can't make head or tails of it for various reasons. And I'm not specifically talking about ColourPop, I'm just talking about general bandwagoning, because an uninformed voice can do as much harm as someone with the intent to harm. Because
Yes.
in all of your self righteousness and in all of your need to do good by people, you may end up misconstruing information, sharing information that's not accurate. Like I've seen, for example, there's a lot of discourse in the Twitter Jewish community of people that are not Jewish that want well, or theoretically that's what they say, but they keep using Jewish stereotypes that they're not aware of, specifically in conspiracy theories and other discourse. So we must be very careful and have a personal responsibility that when we do try to drag a brand, we do it in a manner that we feel safe, is not from a place, a reactionary place without any backing to it.
Yes.
And for brands, it's like you guys get paid dollars from our pockets or euros or whatever else you have. It is your duty and your marketing team's duty, your product design's duty to do their research and not just copy paste a pretty pattern that you saw on Google, because you may not know what meaning it has.
Yes. And I think even in there too, is before you start the dragging, you maybe want to ask someone who is a part of that community if they find offense. Ask a few people, because I find so often that there are so many people who aren't of that group who are squawking. And even if I was offended by something or felt, and I get annoyed by the word offended because people are overusing it and don't know what it means, so they're using it incorrectly. So I'm going to say irritated. If I was irritated by something, I get very, very annoyed when my voice is like the last one heard and it affects me. So
they're
it's like
essentially speaking over you. Like they're so it's basically they are performing wokeness, right? Because they try to appear, you know, woke and good people, but don't realize that in their eagerness they're trampling all over the marginalized voices that they think they're protecting. Like with the Black Lives Matters movement, you had a lot of white influencers that would just, instead of reposting what was happening and people affected and voices affected, they would just tweet incessantly very inane, very superficial stuff that wasn't helping anybody, and then whine that they're losing followers. And I'm like, you can't associate yourself with a movement for human rights and then whine that you're losing followers. It's kind of sus.
It's very it's sketchy. It's extremely sketchy, especially because I feel like, here's the thing: if you cared in the first place, it's one of the reasons why I will continue to, why Jen is one of my dearest friends, because of the varying people who had an ability to speak about this. She literally handed her platform over and said, you speak, I am going to listen, and I'm going to let, all the people here listen. And I feel like that's the kind of stuff that I'm looking for. It's not always going to be perfect, right? But like at the very least made an attempt to use her platform to allow Black voices a space to talk about our experiences, to talk about how it feels on YouTube. And instead, what I saw were tons and tons and tons of white creators creating hashtags and being like a full face of Black-owned brands. And I'm like, I just felt like excluded from the conversation. So honestly, I don't think I even made anything with regards to it, because I was like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm just not joining now like, I already know what it means for me. So I'm not going to do a whole video of Black-owned brands at this point, because it's like completely saturated by white voices and white faces. And on top of that, they're all using, brands that aren't necessarily Black-owned. Great.
Oh yeah, I heard that some of them weren't necessarily Black-owned. On one hand, it's a knife with two edges, right? I don't think that idiom translates literally in English, but on one hand, they did some good because they showcased a lot of brands that a lot of people, including myself, didn't hear about. On the other hand, there was a lot of bandwagoning where even people like, I had people ask me, why aren't you making a full face of Black-owned brands video? And I replied, like, first of all, I could get broke because most of them are based in the US and I can't just go buy a full face of makeup. Secondly, the shipping would take ages. Third, I would rather just do my research on the products and buy them when I want to buy them and support the companies when I have the money to support them, rather than performatively do it now and then never buy from them again. Because like I've got a lot of stuff on my wish list from Black-owned brands, but they need to trickle into my collection just like everything else, because money.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, see, I swear I'm working on like a beauty YouTube, like makeup exchange for those of us who like I want stuff from Europe and you want stuff from here. It's just like, order what you will, ship it to me. I will ship it to you. And it's going to be significantly cheaper and probably faster. And you can get like virtually anything that you want from here. But yeah, I mean, there are creators that I side-eyed when I saw them do that. Because I guess I just looked at it. First of all, like, words, they all seem to have the same like three brand, like Fenty and Pat McGrath. And my issue with that as well was that like they're leaving out brands that are affordable as well. So it's like, it's real cute to do this and all, but like Pat McGrath is not affordable for a large chunk of people. So what? Like, there's so many different brands out there. So I just kind of sat there looking, like, Mented was not mentioned, Prime Beauty. There were so many other Black-owned brands that could have been a part of that. And instead of, you didn't even have to do a full face. You quite literally could have spoken about, and those were the things that I was looking at. Was like, you could have just talked about Black-owned brands, not you personally, but like people who are doing this, and made it a point. You're like, hey, sir, I do not know what you are doing, but stop now. The door is locked and you can't just open it. Rude.
Puppy. I love him.
But it just, and I think somebody had said maybe the word was double-edged sword, but I got what you said. Because I don't know why. I'm just like that. And, Kobe saying reminds me of the term hijacktivism, where people would talk about an issue that doesn't impact them, but center victimize themselves. Yes. And that becomes the issue, because a lot of people will literally be like, I mean, I don't know. I can't imagine what it's like to be Black, but da, da, da. And I'm like, shh, there isn't a but. Just leave it at, I can't imagine what it's like to be Black, and let it go. Because there isn't a but there. You can't imagine it. Like, I can't imagine what it would be like to live in a war-torn country. I can't imagine. And I'm not going to say a but, because there's no way I can imagine living there. all I can do is say, I really hope that these folks are safe and that they are being
Yes.
cared for and that something is happening. And I just would like to be here for anyone who has this issue. You know what I mean? Instead of saying, like, I
Yes.
can't imagine what it's like to be Black, but what I'm going to say about it is blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, shh.
Sometimes simplicity is the easiest way to show support, but it's not as flashy. So a lot of people either think it's not enough, or they, as you said, hijack the whole situation to show that they're a good person. Like, look at me, I'm such a good person. Look at me, I completely understand what's happening in the US.
Yes.
Look at me, I'm such a good person. And I try to avoid that as much as I can while still being visibly politically involved with my channel, because on one hand I don't want people to think I don't care. On the other hand, I don't want to be that person that just talks and talks and talks for the sake of hearing myself talk, while not offering anything truly of substance, because I'm not there, so I don't have the full scope to be completely useful in what I'm saying. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. And I think that that's a different thing because it's like, especially being in Europe while all of this is happening, do you know, it took a little bit for me to even understand that it was like a worldwide situation. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because it just never occurred to me. I mean, I get it. I got that racism exists in other places. Don't get me wrong. But it never occurred to me that what happened here in the US, ignited the world. And so when I started seeing that, I was like, wow, this is intense. This is more than just like here. And I love the creators who didn't center themselves in the conversation. I liked creators who would say something to the effect of, you know, Black Lives Matter. I can't imagine what's going on. Pray for these people, or whatever it is that people do. And then they moved on with what they were going to do and didn't make it about themselves. They were like, I can't give you information. These are people, these are resources. Yes. These are things that you need to like look into if you are concerned, as opposed to grandstanding.
You know, this American centrism is also beneficial in a way because, okay, let's talk about Romania's situation. Regarding both shade ranges, which is like a more superficial, in that it is not at all superficial and it's symptomatic of the society that we live in, topic, and then regarding racism. So before I got into the beauty space, I feel that the beauty space was a way for me to get woke and to understand a lot of the issues, because I started watching a lot of politically minded people, things that I would not have thought before my own, because here they are quite normalized and they're not discussed in the critical way that they are discussed on here on such platforms.
Yeah.
So for example, for shade ranges, it never quite hit me before coming to beauty YouTube that there is a problem with shade ranges globally. Before, I would look at our stores and I would say, oh, but you know, it doesn't matter that there aren't many shades, because there aren't, you know, that many people of color in our country. And in time, I realized that that was wrong, because one, we have a huge minority Roma population and they get quite a bit darker than us. Quite a bit tan towards, I would say, medium dark with olive undertones. And then they don't have the shades, which is a show of how systematic racism in Romania is. And it's one of the most superficial symptoms, in that it's the one that least affects them comparatively to other things.
Yeah.
And then the Black Lives Matter movement showcased how a lot of Romanians are very hypocritical, because they will be, I'm not racist against Black people, but G slur can go die.
Yeah.
And it showcased the way that racism is so insidious in our country, because people think that they are good people because they're not racist against Black Americans, but in the same breath, they wish genocide on a historically oppressed people in our country. They did not teach us in school what we did to the Roma people, We were not aware. I was 24 years old when I found out that we sent Roma people to concentration camps in World War II. I
Oh my
was
God.
24-year-old when I found out that in I don't know which century right now, but a couple of centuries back, there was a Roma genocide. And I was 25 years old when I realized that aside from generally oppressing the poor population, because that's what boyars do, nobles in our time, they also had Roma slaves. And after I found that out, it hit me. This is why they are a marginalized group. This is why they have such a hard time in our country. Why is this not taught? So, in
Yeah.
a sense, centrism towards American discourse sparked discourse in my little Facebook bubble regarding racism that was happening in our, and then it got me educated with more than what was happening in the US. But I still have
Yeah.
so much more to learn.
That is so intense. Like Daisy said, that is intense. I'm like, yes, oh my gosh, because there's things I feel like there are things that I didn't learn. Like I was 40 years old when I really understood that George Washington's teeth were not made of wood. They were made of slave teeth. Wow. So how upsetting. But and I always knew that that didn't make sense, right? You know, I was like, how would you eat with wooden teeth? Like that doesn't make any sense. Did he just take them out and eat mashed potatoes? Were mashed potatoes a thing then? You know, even like at a young age, it just didn't make sense. And so there are good parts of US centrism, like you were saying, that it kind of forces a discourse for you to start learning more about where you live and what kind of oppression that any other people has experienced that you didn't know about. And that's why like shade range is, as you'd said, insidious, like such a small thing. And it's a very insidious thing because every time someone comes and says something to the effect of, oh, well, I don't think that brands should have to have all shade ranges, because I'm like, that's easy for you to say because it doesn't affect you. This is why you can say that. This is why it is an insidious thing, because you can generally sit there and say like, well, it's their business and they can do what they will and like blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, well, let's flip this around and pretend that you don't have an ability to find a shade range for a foundation. Imagine how different it would be if there was just only foundations for people of color and like barely a smattering for anyone lighter. Like if that was the case, people would have an issue. They would be, and they already do, because when they do go to like look at a brand that is, you know, Black owned, Latina owned, just owned by people of color, they have something to say. They're like, oh, well, they don't have a foundation in my shade. Like it's all brown. Look at that. And then they will say these words unironically and go, if it was the other way around. And I'm like,
can you just shut up? Like, just my, and I've never seen this libertarian free market, don't thread on me, corporations should do what they want discourse from someone that wasn't incredibly privileged in one way or another. Like, I've not seen discourse from people that had hardship at some point in their life. I've not seen this discourse from people that were the default. Like, I've not seen it from anyone that didn't have it good. Like, I share a lot of bullshit on Facebook and people love to argue with me in the comments because fucking of course. And I posted a thing about how the lower parts of income should be good enough and big enough for people to not starve even when they work 8 hours a day. And this guy, who I've never met in my life, just left me a wall of text practically insinuating that I didn't know what I was talking about because I was not on my own money. And I'm like, first of all, how dare you, a stranger, come into my online home and assume I'm some sort of person that doesn't work and that's why I have these opinions. Second of all, I make good money. I'm on my own. I live with my guy. I'm a full independent adult. And guess what? I still think that people, whatever job they have, should make enough to survive. It doesn't mean that they need to make the equal amount of money that everyone else makes, just that the lower part of salary should be well enough for everyone to survive in, and then we adjust the others accordingly.
But that's the thing that they don't want to hear. They don't want to adjust the others. That's the reality, because they haven't done it since I was graduating college and graduating high school. Like they haven't done it since then. In the U.S., the median salary, the starting salary, is still between like $33,000 and $36,000 a year. And to give y'all an idea of that, that was 2001. Here we are 19 years later, almost 20 years later, and it is still the same amount, but everything else has gone up. And it's just very frustrating, because the idea that, like, for instance, bringing it into the realm of beauty, that these are luxuries, and that, you know, oh, you should have to be able to afford it, and this and that really bothers me, because it insinuates that if you are not rich, essentially, that you don't deserve anything nice. And it really, like, makes me mad. And I think that does correlate in some ways to even things like the exchange rate, and buying something overseas from America and having it shipped there. Like, people don't necessarily understand when they're asking you, like, Mia, can you get this palette? And you're like, I mean, I could, but like, it's a lot.
Expensive. Like, for example, I feel that this leads to bias on the YouTube algorithm towards American creators.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily fault YouTube for this, because, you know, free market and whatever, and a big part of the production of cosmetics, of popular international cosmetics, happens in America because Americans talk about it, and it's a vicious circle. It's a vicious circle here. So the problem is the following. Let's say a creator from, I don't know, Romania, Bulgaria, Ukraine, Russia, wants to start a channel that is English-based because they want to appeal to a larger audience, or because they want to speak with other English-based creators. They are not going to be able to get as much stuff as an American would, simply because stuff doesn't ship, or the exchange rate is prohibitive, or they simply don't have that income to spend on things. And so their content is inherently going to lag behind content from a creator that is more US or new releases centric. Of course, I realize that also happens with USA creators that don't want to focus on new releases, but it's just an element to keep in mind. Like, for example, the conversion rate dollar to Romanian leu, let's see, because it was $1 in lei.
Hold on,
so
1
right
second.
now,
Keep talking. I'm gonna just.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Ow. No,
Okay.
Let me just look.
Oh, puppy motherhood.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I don't care. I'll probably be drunk, and it's fine. Thank you. Merry Christmas. Calm down, dude. I thought it was a package. I am so sorry that I had to interrupt y'all, though. But like, my neighbor made me cookies.
Pretty. Oh, like, I love that.
I'm like, fucking cookies, hell yeah. And if I don't answer the door, like if I don't go at least towards the door when someone knocks, he loses his shit. It's something we've been working on.
Puppy.
So, all right, sorry, y'all.
So I was saying that the conversion rate right now is 4 lei means $1. And our salaries are much smaller than yours. So a Romanian does not make what an American makes. You guys would not survive 1 week in America on a good Romanian salary.
Fact.
But cosmetic prices are precisely the same, with added interest, because import fees, because stores here do need to make their own profit, and so on and so forth. So a lot of people, for example, say, oh, Elf is the most affordable drugstore brand. And I'm like, Elf is 5 times as expensive on here. one of the primer infused blushes is 60 lei here in my city at Douglas. That is half the price of a Becca blush, for example, or kind of like that. So I could go buy myself, I could just save more money and go buy a Sephora brand than buy that e.l.f. blush, because it's no longer affordable drugstore here. This is why
I did not even, like, my mind is blown. I'm sitting here like, e.l.f.? Like,
yes.
Oh my gosh.
That's because also American brands get exoticized because they're American. So even if they buy them on the cheap, they know people will buy a lot because, oh, it's e.l.f., it's an American brand. Like here, drugstore is super expensive. Like, why should I pay 70 lei on a L'Oreal foundation when I could just save up more money and go get myself, I don't know, like 130 lei Clinique foundation, like a 50 lei difference. It's only 1.5 times more expensive than the drugstore. So why should I bother with drugstore? You know what I mean?
Like I'm sorry, you have forever fucked me up right now, because now that I'm thinking about, I'm like, but you know what? I should have known this, because when I grew up in Okinawa, Japan, going to Burger King was like a big event. It was it was like going out to a, 5-star restaurant here in the US, because it was so expensive there. And so when I got here, I didn't understand the concept of just like going to fast food whenever you wanted to. I was like, wait, this is not a special day. Like, what's going on? And it does make sense. But here's the thing, there was a point that you'd made a little bit ago where you were talking about like a creator who, in like even my channel, like I choose not to focus on new releases, because honestly, I don't want to get myself bogged down in this, like, not even just like the capitalism part of it, but just bogged down with product I don't necessarily want, because I'm just trying to like have my video be like, it's all new stuff, come on in, buy stuff. Like, that's not my personality. But the thing is, I have the option. That's the difference. As if you're overseas and you're lagging, it's not because of you're making a conscious choice. You don't even have the option to say like, I don't want to do this thing. You're like, well, I can't really do it anyway. So
I mean, like, technically, you could argue that you have the option, but you choose not to go broke for makeup. Because it's like, for example, I do have the option to buy all of this shit. I just don't wanna, because I also want to be able to afford food at the end of the month. So
yes,
it's a non-choice.
Yeah, like, despite my frame, I actually do fully enjoy eating as much as I possibly can. This is really cool, because a lot of people are coming through here and saying, the $3 e.l.f. palettes are 400 to 500 Taka. The Wet n Wild lipsticks, 500. The Pat McGrath, $75. Affordable for Pat's brand palette is 7,000 Taka plus tax and shipping. Oh my gosh. I don't know if I said that correctly, by the way, because I don't know if it's Taka. So please don't be mad at me. I learned phonics, and that is not necessarily helpful for anyone. Yeah. So I know that, like, here's the thing, like Sharon was saying, drugstore brands aren't necessarily inexpensive in comparison, though. So here's the thing about drugstore brands. Drugstore brands, in comparison to going into Sephora and Ulta, especially here in the US, are significantly more inexpensive and accessible. Like, that is the point of being able to go to the drugstore, is that it's like far more accessible. So I can buy, essentially, if I didn't want to bring my makeup on a plane with me, let's say that the Pangea is over, I don't want to bring my makeup with me, and I'm like, I'm going to buy makeup when I get to Florida. Why I would go to Florida when I don't really enjoy the beach is another thing. But I should be able to buy my CoverGirl foundation in a grocery store in Florida. It's not going to be any different. Like, I should be able to just go from here to there. Whereas Sephora's can be more difficult to find. Not everybody has a Sephora near them unless you are in Texas. because this is the capitalism capital of the US. And so like there's just Sephora's virtually everywhere. But the thing is, it doesn't even matter if they are everywhere. I just want to drive like up the street a mile to the Walmart to grab these 3 products. Whereas with Sephora, I have to like, it's going to be a 15-minute drive that I'm uninterested in doing. So I think that while we have it in our heads that it's inexpensive, it's not just about drugstores being inexpensive. It's also about them being in comparison to big brand and Sephora and Ulta and exclusionary or exclusive brands, as well as accessibility.
Yes, definitely. I think another thing people don't discuss about accessibility is also that accessibility is different for everyone, as you said. So, for example, Sephora is not a thing in the UK, as far as I'm aware. Like, they have Boots. Yeah. Ulta doesn't exist here. We have Sephora and we have Douglas. So even the platforms from which you can shop are different. Also, I just need to get on my soapbox regarding Makeup Revolution, because a lot of people get on their asses about copying other stuff.
Yes.
But I don't feel that they're giving them their flowers. Makeup Revolution gets in hot water because they release 900 of their products and then they release 10 dupes and everybody remembers them for their dupes. In 2019, they released 950 items. They sent an email with that number. So it's a number from them, but people only remember their duping scandals. What people don't realize is that Makeup Revolution makes stuff and colorways accessible for people in Europe that do not have access to Huda, to Colourpop, to Anastasia Beverly Hills, to Urban Decay, to Kat Von D. Makeup Revolution was a thing here when we didn't have Urban Decay in stores. The Urban Decay in stores came here in 2017, 3 years ago. Makeup Revolution is here for people that don't want to pay the import taxes on Colourpop. Makeup Revolution offers inclusive shade ranges via their website with super cheap shipping in Europe for people that do not want to buy something that is as expensive as a Sephora makeup brand. And sometimes even the Sephora makeup brands here don't have the darker shades. So yeah, man, they're shady sometimes and they do copy stuff, but they serve different markets. They're equalizing the market a bit.
And see, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because like this is another brand that I'm going to start adding to brands that I'm going to be trying for 2021, because they're
very hit and miss. Beware.
Yeah, I know, but there's a few things I did want to try. But there's something specific, because I do think I have some bronzers from Makeup Revolution.
Yeah.
I do think I have a very different feel for dupes than I think a lot of people do, because I do not like the way that it's a form of gatekeeping in a way. Like, you can't afford this, so you can't have anything commiserate or near or nice, like as nice. It bothers me, because I sit there and I go, okay, so what if it's a dupe of Natasha Denona? Everybody can't buy Natasha Denona. Like the idea that you're trying to tell someone like, oh, save up your like $8 billion to buy this palette. Like it's a makeup palette. So trying to tell someone to save up for it, but also like, I understand you ripping off the actual packaging. That sucks. But there's only so many colors in the world. Right. There's only so many colors. There's only so many color combinations. Hi, Ginger Art. I don't know if I said hello to you earlier. Thank you for the compliment. And I feel like we just kind of, again, it's a gatekeeping against those who don't necessarily have the money, and also to those who, again, aren't in the US. We tend to be very harsh and saying like, oh, well, they did this thing and like da 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 da. I'm like, okay, but I have to take steps back, because I'm learning from those around me who are not in the US. And I'm like you, where I'm finding out, oh my God, I did not know that e.l.f. was like that expensive. So finding that kind of stuff out makes me realize like, okay, well, I need to like calm my ass down with, affordable and maybe put like affordable and then have like a little flasher that's like US affordable. Like, I don't know how much it costs everywhere else, but I'm definitely going to say when I say affordable, I'm referring to affordable in the US, not necessarily everywhere else, because we say that and with, again, very US centric and don't ever think about it may not be affordable in Romania, which I still want to go there.
Something regarding dupes, like I plan to make a video on this at a certain point, but so there's that argument that, oh my God, they're stealing intellectual property, they're stealing artistic designs, and I'm like, it's not a Monet, it's not a Gauguin, it's not a Van Gogh. These brands are not creating makeup as art pieces. They're not creating makeup because they just want to share their vision with the world. 99% of mainstream brands are creating makeup because they think it's going to sell.
Yes.
Yes, it's bad for the designers and the color artists that somebody's taking their idea, but on the other hand, it's not art in the sense that we are used to seeing art.
Yeah.
Not to mention that a lot of people again forget that the person who is buying the dupe is not the same customer that would buy the original. People that are looking for a dupe at Makeup Revolution are never, ever going to spend their money on Natasha Denona prices.
Yes.
Most of the people, I'm not going to generalize, but most of the people that bought Makeup Revolution dupes maybe would not ever be able to save up or do not want to save up for, I don't know, ABH prices. Like I used to use Makeup Revolution when I was in college, and I certainly did not have the stream of income where I could ever get myself an ABH palette.
Yeah.
So like just let people enjoy things, because these companies do not care one single shit about you. They do not care about you white knighting their products, and if they could, they would rip off each other non-stop to make more money, unless trade laws would prevent them from doing so.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Oh my God. So sorry. He has like destroyed my thigh again. But yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it too. For instance, BH Cosmetics, which can be hit or miss. They can have really fantastic, wonderful formulas and then other formulas where you're like, what the fuck happened here? But like, speaking of, Jen being here, like I received a small, in PR, I received like this small bronzer palette, which I've been playing with. I haven't played with it enough to like give a judgment yet, but I've been playing with it and I appreciate that like this exists. You know what I mean? So like, I appreciate that there are brands making things that are for deeper skin tones. I appreciate the fact that we have to realize that like dupes don't necessarily mean that
complete
people, it's not a complete ripoff. And like somebody else was saying, like trying a color story before you do that. Like, why would me who likes, the exotic bird, why would I go buy a Natasha Denona palette? Because to me, a lot of those color stories are going to be very pinky and mauvey and like the things that I'm not super into, like very, very, I'm going to work. I'm a business bitch. And that's like not me. Right. So like, I don't think that I would feel comfortable spending that kind of money for that palette, because I would just be like, so is there any like shimmery blue? Oh, there's not a shimmery blue. Is there there's not a multi-chrome. Okay. Well, what about like, is there anything really, oh, there's not. Okay. So there's no bright, it's nothing. Oh, is there a purple? No. Okay. Green. All right. Well, just put that away. Like that's how I would feel. But if I wanted to try a color story from Natasha Denona, then yes, Makeup Revolution would be something that I'd go towards. I'm not expecting for the quality to be at that same level. And I feel like that's the other part that people are missing when they get angry about dupes, is I'm like, but the quality is not even the same a lot of times. So like, why are you mad? Like,
yeah. And it's like, sometimes maybe there are some rare people that are not sure how a colorway would look on them, and then they want to practice with that colorway, stuff like that. Like, why would you force them to pay Natasha Denona or ABH prices or anything else when they don't want to do it? free
Yeah.
market, you know. I just want to clarify my earlier point, because so I do believe in art, in makeup as an art object, right? But
Yes.
that is an attribute, a quality that we ascribe to it through the personal relationship that we have with it. It's not what the brands think it is, at least not the big brands. Indie brands, I am excluding for this conversation. Whoever copies an indie brand is trash. Specifically,
Yes.
if it's a bigger brand copying an indie brand, that's
Yes.
trash. We don't know her. But when it's an instance of you're just, making things accessible for people, I just think people are too up in arms about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
makeup revolution is actually expensive in India. Yeah, because it's one of the export brands for you guys. Like US brands are export brands for us as well. It's
Oh,
all relative. It's all relative, unfortunately. So the word affordable, you move around the world, it loses its meaning.
it does. It actually does. Like now I feel bad every time I've said like not like but I actually do because it just didn't occur to me. Because there is a part of me that has been slowly throughout the year removing talk around price unless we're being gouged. Well, I feel being gouged like Scott Irons. But like
No, but that by all definitions, Scott Barnes is just whack. He must be on some type of bad drug to think that's okay. To come with
listen.
those prices, like no, I despise that man like slightly.
I mean, I feel like those prices are so left field and just out of control. And I have been working towards not really even talking about the price of something. Like, even when I'm reviewing things, I've kind of moved away from discussing the price because anything that I have, to me, it may be like, not particularly expensive to me. But like if I say something's $12, I'll be like, oh, that's not bad. But somebody else, $12 is a lot. To another person, $12 is like, what's even $12? Who even cares? So I've kind of just started removing that concept. And I feel like if somebody wants it, then they will go look at it and buy
Yes,
it. Because I
exactly.
feel like every time I talk about like how much something costs, it's relative, because there was a time in my life where a palette being $30 was just like, the fuck? I can't afford that. Like I was living in a small bedroom. Like I couldn't afford to spend money on makeup. So when somebody said like, "Oh, it's not that expensive. It's only $25." I'm like, $25. That is a lot of ramen. Like that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I am surviving on rice and ramen and like random meat in a pouch. I just need you to like realize that some of us live like that. So when you say $25, I'm just like, well, not buying that.
Someone mentioned earlier AliExpress makeup, and that's
Yeah.
a whole throwback for me. I still buy some AliExpress makeup. Like,
Yeah.
actually, I just recently got these Focalier lipsticks because they've rebranded and they look super cool. It's like a moussey matte texture. Hashtag not
Ooh.
sponsored. They don't know who I am. But speaking of AliExpress makeup, for a very long time before the US makeup entered the market and the post-communist overthrowing revolution, so in 89, for those that do not know, before 89 we were a more or less closed market. We were under communism. A lot of the stuff was produced internally, including the few cosmetics that we had. Post 89 we literally caught our dictator in a helicopter and shot him dead. And then the market started getting privatized. We started going more international, and that's why it just literally took so many goddamn years for everything to get to us. For a very long time, while I was in high school, middle school, the most prevalent makeup that we had was Avon, which is an MLM, or Flame, which is another MLM, and Asian makeup, either nondescript makeup, in the sense that even if I search for the brands now, I don't get like an official page. So they were probably small producers and they got exported to us. or brands that you would find on AliExpress, because those, even with the import fees, they would still be affordable. And yes, AliExpress brushes, the best brushes that I have are from AliExpress, and they're from the brand Jessup. Can't recommend them enough. I still use them.
Wait, while I'm thinking, I'm going to the site.
Just aliexpress.com and search Jessup. AliExpress.com is like the Asian Amazon. They're not one store, one brand. They're multiple sellers peddling their shit. So you have to be careful. Look at reviews, look at seller ratings, just like on Amazon.
Yeah.
So in high school I would still use a lot of these MLMs. Some Polish brands were starting to trickle in. Still not a lot of American brands, except maybe some Maybelline, some L'Oreal, and slim pickings even then.
Yeah.
And then I discovered, wait a second, man, I can get it directly from the sellers from AliExpress. Like, I'm in no rush. I can wait 1.5 months for them to come to me. And so I discovered all of these brands that are legitimate, but they do not appear in US EU markets, such as Focallure, Beauty Glazed, Mace, whatchamacallit. There are some others, I can't recall them right now, but they make a lot of stuff, a lot of good, medium to good quality stuff, but they always get dismissed with this slight xenophobic undertone of, oh, it's makeup made in China. Who knows what's in there? And I'm like, baby girl, baby boy, baby they. 90% of the brands that you use produce in China. As long as the brand looks legit and the reviews are good and it doesn't look sketchy and it has its own name. So it's not Anastasia Beverly Hills misspelled, but it has its own name and its own line. That line is legit.
Yeah. And here's the thing, it's a lot like Yes Style, right? Because Yes Style comes through and everybody's just like, I know it's being shipped from China. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I have a boatload of stuff. I'm an affiliate. I love buying, because the difference in price sometimes between buying it here and buying it on Yes Style, I'm like, I'll wait a few weeks then. Like that is literally how I feel about it now, where I'm just like, I would rather wait a few weeks and get like a bunch of skincare at one time. And it's not super, super expensive like it is here, because like once they brought it here, the price changed.
Yes, exactly.
Because like,
someone mentioned Flormar. Someone mentioned, this is a blush. Okay, this is not the same blush, but I have been using this one blush since high school. Nonstop Flormar 41 Romantic Salmon. My old one was 6 years old and it started smelling funky, so I threw it away and bought a new one. But this is again another popular brand where I'm from, like Flormar, Golden Rose, Ruby Rose, some Italian brands like Pupa and Kiko. So it's like we've got so many different things and affordable things. Affordable.
This has become my new favorite thing. Daisy just said, also, like, guaranteed about 90% of the medicine you ingest and get at a pharmacy in the US is made in China. So good luck with that xenophobia, finding some Tylenol to take from your hate headache.
I understand people criticizing China's government and their regime and trying to make a stand in the way that they can. But I assure you, saying that you hate Chinese makeup from your Chinese manufactured iPhone and in your house where parts are made in China with your pen that is probably made in China isn't helping anyone. It's not helping the people of China. It's not helping overthrow the government. It's not helping raise awareness. It's just you being uninformed about makeup made in China.
Yeah.
And it also perpetuates a negative stereotype of everything bad quality being made in China, when literally 90% of the world's goods, I mean, that's a number that I threw out there, but so much stuff is made in China. So if you want to have a say about the injustices that the Chinese government makes towards Uyghur minorities, towards their own people, you need to do more than being performative woke about makeup made in China.
Yeah.
You need to have a deeper conversation than don't buy makeup from AliExpress.
Yes. Because it's I feel like it's very, very easy. And it actually goes all the way back to what you started with, was just saying, like, people start talking and then they don't have all of the facts and they don't have all of the information, and they're dragging brands for this and dragging, well, I'd love to buy from this brand, but they're not cruelty free. And I get very frustrated by that argument, because I go, okay, so I just want to tell you that makeup's been around for a very, very long time. And unfortunately, the animal testing has already concluded, and that's been done. And now they know that these things don't hurt us, or how they hurt us, or whatnot. And again, I'm never defending animal cruelty. Please do not think that that is what I'm defending. But the reality of the situation was, at the time, there really wasn't another wonderful way to do it, or they weren't looking for another good way to do it. And they just knew it was animals or people. So it's like, we have to remember where some of this stuff comes from. And then the idea that cruelty-free means something, because people also forget that they have to pay to become cruelty-free. There are plenty of brands that are cruelty-free. There are indie brands that are obviously cruelty-free, but they're not paying to say that they're cruelty-free. They just are. Like, they're making makeup in their kitchen. Can you like please understand that there's nothing happening there? And like
Yes, and I think it's Jen Gerard earlier in the comments said that she's seen some shit in China, and agreed. But it's something that happens in every country. Unsanitary conditions, worker exploitation, backyard manufacturing happens in every country. It is our duty as the consumer, or the duty of the brand owner, to make sure that their supply chain and that their manufacturers are doing right by their workers, by the local sanitation laws, and that they are just doing the best they can to bring in a quality product, no matter if it's manufactured in the EU, if it's manufactured in South Asia, in the US, or China. Because being manufactured at one place does not guarantee either good or bad quality. That depends on the lab and on the on the factory. Of course, I'm not trying to like layman-splain the situation, because I'm sure Jen, as a business owner, has much more insight than I do. But this is just my personal opinion as I see it from the outside in.
Well, I've worked in logistics. I have worked in food area, like food warehouses. I have worked in varying. There is, I'm going to say this, literally no foolproof way for every single item that is manufactured, created, packaged, and shipped to be completely free of any kind of contaminants, rat, bird. Like, there's a lot of things that I have seen. I have just seen things where, instead of, for instance, throwing out a bag of food, they tape up the bag and then they say, we're sending this to someone. And we like, infestations happen. They don't alert people that an infestation happened. And then they like bombed the whole area.
Fiber. Extra fiber, extra protein.
I mean, it's because there's only so much that can be done, not that can be done, that they're willing to do. A lot of factories do not want to pay an actual cleaning force. What they do is force the laborers who are already there to do like cleanup after every shift, which doesn't mean that it's necessarily getting all cleaned up, right? And then there are people who like, that's what they do in the day, but they're not hiring additional workforce to do cleaning, because warehouses are large and they don't want to pay for it. And they don't, like, they know if they're going to pay, they're going to, regardless of the idea that people have that they're going to pass the cost on, that is false anyway. That really bothers me. It's false. Those costs don't get passed on. They just don't want to pay, because it cuts into their bottom line and they don't like that. So the point of the name of their game is making as much money as they possibly can. So I feel like the idea that any warehouse anywhere in the world is better than another is false, because I have seen a lot of creepy things, and I've been here doing that. And I've been like, oh my gosh, wow, we're just gonna, all right, I guess that's what we're doing now. You know,
as long as it doesn't poison anyone, vaya con Dios.
Yeah, right? Like people will put on clothes thinking like, oh, I got it from the warehouse. And I'm like, it's been on the floor. I just want you to know it's been on the floor in that warehouse and they dusted it off and packed it up in like a little plastic and sent it to you. Like, Lord knows how long it's been on that warehouse floor. It's been in the back. It's been dusty. There's probably been a time or two where a rat and or bat has peed on it. Like that has happened to your things. So we, there are things that should make obvious sense where it's like the fact that the cruelty free, I think people still think that a large chunk of stuff is being tested on animals. And from my understanding, the 99% of that is false because again, almost all of the ingredients we have today have already been through all of that. And so you're just using these ingredients again. So I care more about how the laborers are being treated than I do about a label of cruelty free, because I think the two things, one has to be fixed for sure, and the workers need to be compensated and taken care of. We have got to stop acting like, the idea that I get a pallet from ABH and the people who make it are getting paid pennies, it doesn't sit right with me, right? Like they're being treated poorly.
The notion of a cruelty-free lifestyle does not exist. I feel it's a smoke screen. The problem is that a lot of people identify with their chosen lifestyle and lose all moderate thinking. Some people, not all. I may be guilty of this with some stuff as well. Like, I'm not some saint that never does anything bad ever. I don't want to come across as preachy or self-righteous in this. But for example, a lot of vegans and cruelty-free people get very preachy, very negative, very aggressive towards people that either disagree or do not want to be that lifestyle, without considering that harm reduction can happen in many different ways. You do not know that person's life. You do not know what they are doing, what their political beliefs are, what they're cutting from their life, what they think is right and what they think is wrong.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of arguments with vegans on Facebook.
You gotta let go of that Facebook life.
No, I'm all about that arguing on Facebook Live, man. It's just entertaining. And a lot of people don't realize that arguing on Facebook is not trying to convince your opponent. You're trying to convince the audience.
Yeah.
And that's arguing on the internet in general. But I was arguing with a lot of vegans because a lot of them in Romania get very aggressive about it without realizing that, one, our vegan options aren't that many. A lot of vegan and vegetarian friendly options are relatively expensive. Vasile from the countryside that grows his own poultry and grows his own veggies and doesn't buy store-bought tofu probably has a more cruelty-free lifestyle than you do, vegan person in Bucharest. And another thing is that there is no such thing as a cruelty-free diet. Maybe the animals aren't suffering, but someone out there either is getting underpaid to get your tofu, or they are suffering working. For example, I read an article about, I believe, workers in India or someplace in South Asia, like somewhere in the neighborhood. They were collecting cashew nuts. And the cashew nut, when you take it out of the shell or something like that, oh no, I'm generalizing. It's hashtag not all vegans, definitely. Just the vegans that act like that, just those.
Yes.
So they need
not
to
all
collect
vegans.
they need to collect the cashew nut and take it away from its shell, and it destroys their hands because of the acids that happen in the nuts. And I'm like, okay, but you eat a lot of cashew as part of your diet. Why am I not hearing you say anything about those workers? Why do you not care about them at all? And it's also a problem where food that used to be specific to marginalized people, like quinoa, becoming more and more expensive, inaccessible to the people that traditionally would use it, because vegans in developed countries raised desire to export it. So it's just you're trying to do the best that you can, but just like everyone else, the good that you do may cause harm in any other place. So at this point, I feel that everyone should be doing what they can as well as they can, but without being preachy to other people regarding their diets. I don't know how we got from makeup to vegans, but
Well, because it all
it
kind of
doesn't
goes
matter.
together because it's
It goes
because it's
together. Yeah.
marketed that way. Makeup
Yes.
is marketed as
A
vegan and cruelty
lifestyle part.
free, and it's very lifestyle. And again, this kind of thing is very upsetting because I don't think people realize that not everyone can get makeup that is cruelty free, right? So there are
Yes.
people currently who the makeup that they can afford, they're buying it from Dollar Tree and Dollar General, and not all of that is cruelty free.
Yes.
So you're essentially trying to penalize people who do not have, you know, money to be buying this makeup, but they still want to look good and they still want to wear makeup and they enjoy it.
Yes.
And so like that is something that I'm conscious of and try not to talk about on my channel because I do not enjoy the idea that anybody could be watching my channel and feel alienated by me saying, you know, oh, I don't get this because it's cruelty free. I don't do this because it's not vegan. There's certain things that I just try to keep, you know, kind of to myself. If that's a thing, if it's important to you, I'll mention. I'll be like, well, this is also cruelty free and vegan if that's important to you. But I try not to like really have that be a focus because I do think that I know, and I know what it's like to not be able to do these things. And all of these things aren't affordable to everyone. I think the realization that there's food deserts where people can't necessarily eat vegan without having to go very, very far, which means that they're driving further, which means that they're using more gas, which means that they're putting out more pollution. So it's just all of these things do come together. And I think that a lot of times people forget when they're talking about it, they're so passionate and they have so much joy about it. And they really want to, you know, encourage others to do the same, but kind of forget that like that's not an option for everyone. And
Exactly.
so, yes, I think that as a world, we should be moving towards helping people to be able to make better choices, but we also have to ensure that those choices are affordable and that those choices do not harm the workers. Because I always bring this up when people were talking about, you know, metal straws and talking about it forever and ever and ever, not realizing that metal straws were ableist because there are people who require just a straw. So if they're going through drive-through and you're not going to give them a straw anymore, then like they don't get to have their drink on the way home like everybody else. They're just sitting there like, so I'm supposed to just bring a metal straw with me everywhere I go. What if I can't afford metal straws? And then on top of that, not considering the fact that like they may have just raised the ground to put up a factory to build more metal straws.
Yes. Like it's not necessarily the problem of people focusing their narrative on a certain way. So focusing your narrative on being cruelty free or focusing your narrative of being vegan and talking about it. It's more like they forget that you can have a lifestyle without invalidating or attacking people that have a different lifestyle than yours. So it's important to have cruelty free channels and vegan channels and luxury channels, but you also don't need to attack the people that choose for some reason or the other to not go cruelty free or go vegan because you do not know their life, you do not know their accessibility. Like for example, when I was vegetarian for 1.5 years, and when I went to visit Cosmin's sister in Sweden, that was of course pre-pandemic, it was much easier for me in Sweden to eat vegetarian and eat very well and be full and satisfied than it was in Romania, because in Sweden they had like a whole aisle of vegan vegetarian options. In Romania it was kind of, as I said earlier, vaya con Dios. You'll manage something.
Yeah, like I'm in Texas, the beef capital of like
Yeehaw.
I feel like it is almost the beef capital of the world. Like there is just beef on beef on beef. And there are vegetarian options here, and like they exist. There's vegan options. a lot of those restaurants don't survive here because beef. The other side of it too is just people don't know about it until it's like closed. They're like, I want to try something vegan, and then the restaurant's closed. And the other thing is cost. The cost is way up there. So you want to try vegan, like, especially if you just wanted to see if you could live this way. You're like, I'm going to try going to this place and seeing like what kind of combinations that they put things into, or if you wanted to try vegetarianism. And I feel like you try to go and you're like, okay, well, this is very, like, I understand that there's an upcharge because somebody else made this for me. But then you go and you try to like research and figure out how much it's going to cost you. And you're like, that's really expensive. I don't know about that. And for me, it's more that like, I actually don't feel particularly well if I don't have some meat once in a while. Like, I just don't feel well. And I will notice it because I stopped eating meat at one point when I was 16 because I just had some and I didn't like it. It was bad. And my mom didn't get sick. We ate the same thing. And then I just didn't. And then I began to realize like a week into it, I was like, I don't feel so good. So now I just like, I incorporate having meat in and like having it when I want to. Not red meat, though. I don't like it. I'm sorry. I don't like beef. I don't like red meat at all. And I won't eat it. So sorry. But I feel like we just kind of have to remember that like all of our choices, everybody is an individual. We all have individual choices, and our choices as individuals are not the impact that we need to start pushing and pressuring. I think as Popskin had noted earlier, that we need to start pushing and pressuring these corporations to do, because our impact becomes better if their impact is better, right? So if they're making sustainable packaging, then we have sustainable packaging that we're taking care of and using it this way.
Yes.
If they're making things that are easily digestible for the world, like when we're finished with it, throwing it away, then when we get the packaging and we're going to throw it away, we already like they need to make it like an actual trickle down, right? Like a real trickle down that works, so that when they are creating a product and they bring it down to us, then we're able to be responsible with how it's treated. And then from that point, the people who dispose of the trash are able to be responsible with how it's treated, instead of what we have right now, which is this is recyclable, but like not really.
You'll manage. Like for example, I was actually looking into recycling what we get into our house because my guy drinks a lot of Coca-Cola, and I was looking into recycling those bottles. Guess what? There is no recycling service in my area except for companies.
Yes.
So fuck me for trying to be environmentally friendly, right?
Yeah. And that is here too. Like, because people will say that all the time about packaging, be like, oh, I wish it wasn't the cardboard packaging. I wish it was this. And I kind of look at people a little bit sideways and I go,
like, why do you want more plastic though?
Huh?
Like, I just think it's like, but why do you want more plastic though? Like I get it that cardboard is not the most luxurious feeling, but you don't need a $12 ColourPop palette to feel like luxury. It's a fucking ColourPop palette, man.
Like, I just
probably
don't get
mean, but
no, but you're right. You're right. Like, I do not expect a brand who is selling me like I don't expect it. And honestly, I don't absolutely love plastic packaging.
I'm kind of sad that even before, like, I'm not buying ColourPop right now because they're still in the doghouse for me for various reasons. And it's just that I'm pissy that they went full plastic for most of their stuff, because when I want to depot their stuff now, I don't, because I feel guilty about throwing away the packaging just for the sake of making more space. And it's like, I wouldn't have this issue with cardboard, because recycling paper and cardboard is much easier than recycling plastic.
Yeah. This is funny. Aditi, I think it's Aditi. I find it hilarious when Indian influencers act all supreme and shit about their vegan diets because 90% of Indian food made without milk-based products is vegan.
Indian food is superior.
Yes.
Superior. South Asian food in general.
Yes. South Asian and a large amount of like, I don't know if what Mediterranean would be considered because I'm not from there. And I just keep seeing it listed as Mediterranean and I'm like, whatever it is, it's good. I feel like there are foods like, for instance, the way that I think I approach makeup, I feel like the way that I approach eating, which is I try to eat freshly prepared food just generally. Because one, a lot of times I am supporting a restaurant that is owned by like actual humans and not a corporation. So there's that part of it. The other part of it is that I tend to not get sick. I have a lot of digestive issues. And so it's funny when people will find that I will eat like a lot of different, Indian, Southeast Asian foods. And they'll be like, how does that not mess up your stomach? And like, because it's not sitting under heat lamps for 37 years.
Yeah.
I show up like, so these are the things that are happening for me that I am able to kind of put that into makeup where I'm like, I bought this because I like this thing. I don't bring a lot of new makeup into my collection without making sure that I'm going through this thing on a regular basis because I don't feel comfortable having a freaky large collection that I don't know what's in it and I don't love everything in it. I like to love the things that I have. And if there's things I have that I don't love, I want to get to decluttering it and getting it over to people who want it rather than me having it forever because I can't. That is stressful for me, having tons and tons of stuff everywhere. As it is, I don't have enough storage space for it, but that's like neither here nor there because I don't want to talk about it.
Okay, so I actually want to bring up 2 points because like I feel that this life is so fun that I want to talk about literally everything. And we'll run out of time. So a first one would be that to touch back to the marketing issue, right? Which YouTube is a big part of it. And I've touched on this in my How American Consumerism Influences International Vanities video. Because we international people look at so much makeup content from the US, we tend to want to match our consumption to that YouTube consumption, which is not realistic for us or for the average American. So I found myself in a place where I was acquiring, decluttering, decluttering, and minimalism has also become quite gentrified. And seen as a mark of virtue. But that's another point that I'll touch on later. And earlier in 2020, I was like, you know what? I gotta pull the brakes. I gotta chill. I don't have time to use all of this shit. So I got into a full year-long budget. I'm continuing it in 2020. And when I started writing down everything that I bought with prices, limiting myself, that's when I really realized that it's so easy to fall prey to marketing that isn't even traditional marketing, influencer marketing, to dictate what the normal is. But if I look at the people around me and how their consumption habits are, the difference is stark. And it takes a very long while to reach a happy medium of loving makeup and being critical of it, to quote myself, of buying new things, of being a makeup lover, while also not falling prey to that toxic marketing where you need every release and you need to wear it like that and you need to have it from the US and you need to do this or this and that. And for decluttering, it's just, I feel that decluttering videos are quite deceptive because most of the popular ones are from makeup gurus that get a lot of PR. And it is easier to let go of PR than stuff that you paid your own money from. And there are a lot of people who have fallen so far into this overconsumption thing where they declutter things, but they do not learn from that declutter. So their declutters stay constant in volume over time instead of holding that object a la Marie Kondo, thanking it for its service and considering, why am I decluttering this and what can I do to not buy any more of this stuff in the future that will go in the trash. It's just a continuous cycle. And it's also the marketing of minimalism and decluttering where you keep decluttering to achieve the perfect form of your collection because it's minimal form that instead of appreciating what you have, it actually implies that you need to purchase the perfect brand, the perfect one thing to be minimalist, which is just the worst capitalist take on minimalism that is perpetuated, and not just in the makeup community, off the soapbox. Sorry.
Yes. No, like there is a specific reason, aside from my love of horror, there is a specific reason I do not have makeup behind me. Because I remember when I first started watching beauty YouTube and then I got into it, seeing people's huge ass collections just gives you, like, even when you didn't think that you wanted to ever have that much makeup, just seeing all of that, like a whole, imagine like I just had all of this was just makeup and makeup and makeup. I feel like seeing that does something. It like activates something in our lizard brain that just, it's hard to feel like it's okay for you not to have it, because every day or every other day or every third day you tune in, you watch a beauty video with me in it, and you're just like inundated with all the makeups I have. And I'm like,
you know, I think it goes beyond lizard brain loves shiny. I feel that there is a sense of community that comes from makeup. And so when we see others talk about a certain item, when we see our favorite beauty YouTuber use it, when we see them display it, we want to superficially be part of the same community. We want that parasocial link to them. And we think that buying that item is either going to bring us closer to them, or it's going to be an item of self-actualization that is going to soothe some of your insecurities, some of the problem in your lives. But it's just a band-aid, you know. An object cannot self-actualize you. It's only an accessory to an activity or an accessory to an aesthetic. And it's not enough to buy an ABH palette to get better at makeup, and it's not enough to buy the latest ColourPop release to be friends with Raw Beauty Christy, and it's not enough to buy the same makeup items that, I don't know, you do to befriend you, Audra. You actually have to put yourself out there and try to connect with these people.
Yeah.
Lizard Brain loves shiny band name. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think that and Scott brought up, like, I don't watch declutters because I think they are wasteful. I think that there's a good and bad side of it. That's another one of those things that's dual, right? Most of my declutters will tend to happen mid to late year, like mid to late summer is what I will say that a lot of them happen, because I have decluttered things during that time period. And in that period, I may have pulled in some different things. Like I'm trying cream products. I'm trying this. I'm trying that. I'm trying a few things from different brands. Now trying some indie makeup because, US, I have the ability to, kind of try the new things that are happening. Right.
Here we don't have returns.
Right. And then I have to start going through that stuff and being like, okay, there's also one thing that people don't keep in mind as well with declutters is like, things have been decluttered to me. I've decluttered things to other people, and you kind of start having to like slide through your collection, which is one of the reasons why I tend to do so many get ready with me's. It's because like that allows me to like start pulling out different makeup that I haven't touched in a little while. Yes. But let's see if I like this, or if I don't like this. But the dangerous and negative side of declutters are the amount of people who enjoy. I will totally let you go in a second because I'm sure my mom is waiting for me.
No, don't worry. Don't stop calling me. I'm discussing important topics.
And also, I do have to take this guy out. But I think that the negative side of it is the amount of people who would be like rude, like decluttering, or even bringing me to the panning, the project pans, where people are like digging into their makeup to try to show that they're panning stuff.
Like drill panning. Like they're trying to hit oil on those pans. And I do not get it.
I'm trying to use all of this, but I'm also not making it a point to say I'm trying to use
Yes.
it. If I happen to use it and finish it, I will be in one of my bops or flops, be like, I finished a thing. I don't do empties because I just can't hold on to trash. I can't do it. But like I can't. And it takes me forever to get through any one thing anyway. And it would actually stress me out more than make me feel good. So
I feel it's
the
also
negative side of it. Go ahead.
Sorry. I feel it's also the viewers that perpetuate this decluttering cycle, because I've seen comments being like, you've not decluttered enough, or why are you keeping this? And I'm like, it's their money, bro.
Yeah.
What the hell?
I have seen people saying that like you only decluttered like 2% of your collection. I'm like, did y'all
calculate
want them to throw out their entire collection for
you? Did you do the math? Like, I get it that maybe it's not as satisfying of a video, right? It doesn't scratch that itch, but
yeah,
you also don't need to put every single opinion that you have out there. Like, if I don't like a declutter or I feel it's triggering or I feel it's wasteful, I click away. Because it's none of my business what they do with their stuff. This year, personally, I've avoided posting my end of year declutters because, one, I didn't want to feel pressured by both COVID makeup usage and knowing that my declutters are being perceived. Because when I'm decluttering for myself, I tend to be more lenient and less regretful. When I declutter for YouTube, I tend to be harsher because I know that's what people want. And then I wonder, is that what I want as well? Or am I just pressuring myself?
Yes. It feels like there's so much pressure to just be like, I'm throwing away everything. Are you satisfied? Like, are you not entertained? Like, but I do have to take Bo out now, y'all. I'm so sorry. We're doing this again for sure. Again, y'all, Mia is listed in the description. I think I have the Instagram and for sure the YouTube channel. I don't know if I included Twitter, but I will do that again later. And I just want to thank you so much for being up this late in the evening. I know you don't have like the most fantastic sleep schedule, but you did not have to stay up this late to hang out. And I truly appreciate you being here. Before I let you go, though, what is something that you want to see in the new year?
In general, and makeup?
Just in general. Even if it's just for yourself. It doesn't have to be magnanimous.
In the new year, I just want people, it's going to sound so boring, but I want to see people be more kind to each other.
Yes.
That's all I want. From kindness stems a lot of other good things. It's a boring answer, but it's the first that comes to mind. So
it's a good answer. That's why I ask. I ask on the spot so people don't have to like sit there and think about some kind of magical thing to say that's going to be so super fantastic, because then that's not fun. So, all right, y'all, thank you so much for being here. Thank you again, Mia. You're such a beautiful soul. I'm so glad that I've gotten to meet you. And if you do not have the Marco Polo yet, I'm going to make you have it because we have to chat.
I'll try and get it.
All right, y'all. Thank you again. And remember, it costs $0 to be kind. It's so good for your soul, because if you don't, Bo apparently is coming for yours. Until next time, XOXO. Got it, girl. Bye.